Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shabbos Daf Kuf Yud Aleph actually contains three Mishnayos. The first three quarters of the Daf are the end of Perek Shmona Shratzim, the 14th chapter in Masechta Shabbos. There's one Mishnah there. And then we'll begin the 15th chapter with a Mishnah, and there'll be another Mishnah actually before the end of the Daf. So the first discussion is about making somebody sterile by drinking a cup of potion that causes him to lose his or her ability to reproduce. Then the Mishnah will return us to a discussion about cures, and we will discuss cures, which one is allowed to do because they are common, and the ones that are uncommon either because they're too vile, no normal person would do it, or because they're too expensive. Then we'll discuss the effectiveness of these cures, and we'll discuss how to use them, and the Gemara will again go back to the machlokes between Rav Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, which we've seen many times throughout this Masechta. So first of all, we are discussing the kais akaron, which is a potion which one could drink, which would help clear up jaundice, but it also had the side effect of causing the person to become sterile. The question is that it was usher. You're not allowed to sterilize a person. You're not allowed to make it impossible for him to be able to have children anymore. So how are you allowed to drink this thing? So the Gemara is sifting through a number of different answers here. We've already seen one on the Daf Kof Yud, but now the Gemara is up to another one. The Gemara says we must be referring to somebody who's already sterile. Since he's already sterile, drinking this thing is not going to affect him any worse. So the Gemara says that can't be the answer, because you're not allowed to do something which is forbidden, even if the effect is already there. How can you prove that? From a chametz. Chametz was not allowed in the carbon mincha, but if you had a carbon mincha that became a chametz, you're not allowed to make it chametz anymore. You aren't allowed to further be mechametz it. And the same person who says that, Rav Yechanan, also adds that you cannot make a sterile person sterile again. How would you do that? Somebody who has an injury or a wound that causes the organs of reproduction to be not fully attached and functional, he can't make another wound in them. The psukim which describe this say umach v'chasus v'nosok v'charos. These are four different injuries, so why do you need them all? Two of them are the same. One is where the organ is disconnected completely from the body, and one is where it's partially disconnected. You don't need both of those. So the Gemara says that you need the two in order to teach you that once you've disconnected them, you're still not allowed to make a nick in them to disconnect them further or to injure them again, because you are re-sterilizing somebody who's sterile already. That's forbidden. So therefore, obviously, even if somebody's already a steris, he's already sterile, he wouldn't be allowed to drink this cup of sterilizing potion. So Gemara says, okay, so we're talking about an old man who is not able to have children anyway. On him it's not forbidden. So the Gemara says, well, it's not true. Old men can still have children. We know that Rav Yechanan was old and he wasn't able to have children, but then he took a medication which was meant for something else, and a side effect of that was he was able to restore his childbearing abilities. So you see that there is no age at which a man cannot bear children anymore. So Gemara says, okay, so it's referring to a woman. Now a woman, there shouldn't be an isser to cause her to be unable to reproduce, because the entire reason that it's forbidden to cause somebody to be unable to reproduce is because the Torah tells us, one is obligated to have children, but a woman's not obligated in that. That's an obligation on men, not on women. So she would be allowed to sterilize herself should she so desire. So Gemara says, but that's not going to help for everybody, because you have the opinion of Rav Yechanan ben Breiko says that women are also obligated in Pru. So that answer wouldn't work. So the Gemara says our final answer is either it's referring to an old woman who definitely cannot have children anymore and therefore it has no effect on her, or it's referring to a woman who's already barren and therefore that's not going to make things any worse for her. She's barren and naturally it's not making the situation worse in any way. The Isser, which we said earlier about sterilizing, does not apply to women. That is a man-related Isser. So the making a sterile man sterile already. Okay, this takes us to the Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses two types of cures. And again, the issue with cures is as follows. Whenever a person suffers from an ache, okay, it's not a real sickness, it's just an ache, and he wants to take something to heal it, it's forbidden. It's Gzeir D'Rabbanan. It's forbidden because he may come to grind powders. It's only permitted in a situation where what he's doing is a normal thing to do, where a healthy person would do that as well. Here we have two types of situations in which a normal person would not do something, either because it's too uncomfortable or because it's too expensive. So the first one the Mishnah discusses is a toothache. The treatment for that is to swill vinegar around the mouth. So where it says normal people wouldn't wash their mouths with vinegar, and therefore you shouldn't be allowed to do that, and you aren't. What you could do, though, is dip your bread into vinegar or put vinegar on your other food, and if the vinegar, as you're eating that, manages to get to the tooth and it heals you, great, that you're allowed to do. Okay, the second thing is somebody who has pain in his loins, the way to cure that is by rubbing it with oil. So he's not allowed to rub on wine or vinegar. Those two things help also, but that's not a normal thing to do. Rubbing it with oil is a normal thing to do, so he could do that. But he can't use rose oil, because rose oil is rare and it's expensive, and he's not able to use that. However, if he is a prince, he's a king, so they have lots of money, and for them, rose oil is something that they are fine rubbing on their skin, even in the middle of the week. They have no problem. Rose oil, they just rub rose oil all the time. So they would be allowed to do it on Shabbos, because for them it's not rare and it's not obviously medical. Now Reb Shimon says that every Jew is allowed to do that, because he has a rule which he applies a few times throughout Shas, is that every Jew has the halachic status of a king and a prince, and therefore he's allowed to use rose oil even on Shabbos. The Gemara asks, is it really true that vinegar is healthy for the teeth? It's Rav Acha Aricha, who is also called Rav Acha Bar Papa, who asked Rabbi Avo, how could you tell me that vinegar is healthy for the teeth? There's a pasuk explicitly in Mishlei which says, the standard metaphor for something which is bad for something is vinegar for the teeth. So the Gemara has two answers. First of all, maybe there's two types of vinegar the Gemara offers. Vinegar just means a fruit-based liquid which is sour. So it could be wine which soured. So the Gemara says that's good for the teeth. However, you could have juice of an unripe fruit or juice of a naturally sour fruit. That would be bad for the teeth. That's the Gemara's first answer. The Gemara's second answer is that it depends what condition your teeth are in. If your teeth are injured, they are hurting you, so then the vinegar is healthy for them because it dries it out, it's astringent, and it causes it to heal in that way. If, however, your teeth are healthy and fine, what the vinegar will actually do is cause the gums to contract with its astringency, and that'll make the teeth loose. That'll be bad. You want that to happen. Okay, now the Gemara discusses the proper manner of using vinegar for the teeth, and which one is permitted and which one is forbidden. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Our Mishnah says that you're not allowed to use vinegar for the teeth, but then we have a brisa that says it depends how you use it. If you swallow it, that's fine. That's something that healthy people would do. If you're going to spit it out, that's not something healthy people would do. So we have a contradiction. Our Mishnah seems to indicate that even if you're going to swallow it, it's a problem. So the Gemara has a few answers here. Again, Abaye says, first of all, Abaye's answer is that our Mishnah was referring to when you are spitting it out, and it would agree that if you're swallowing it, it's fine. Rava says no, it depends which part of the day you're up to. Right? If you've already eaten, so then there'd be no normal reason why there isn't any healthy reason why you would want to swallow vinegar or put vinegar in your mouth at all. In all circumstances, that's forbidden. If ever you didn't eat yet, so you can put vinegar in your mouth. Maybe it's part of your eating. You plan to put bread in it afterwards. The vinegar goes together with food. So just like when somebody drinks milk and cookies, he sometimes puts the milk into his mouth first and then the cookies. So this could be the same thing. He takes the vinegar at first. Since it's not clear from what he's doing that it's obviously medical, not something a healthy person would do, it's not a problem. The only time that medical treatment is forbidden is if when you look at it, you clearly say that's not a normal thing that a healthy person would do. Now the Gemara has a problem with this. The Gemara says, you're telling me that Rava says that the halacha changes based on the time of the day. It can't be, because we know from a different sugya that Rava holds that halachas have to be uniform. They can't change based on the day, the time, whatever it is. What sugya? Where do you see that? It's talking about putting things in the mikvah to take the tumah off. Now, the halacha is that you're not allowed to fix a kli or object or anything on Shabbos. Now, taking tumah off is not really fixing it. It is similar to fixing it. So you're not allowed to place a person or a kli into the mikvah to take the tumah off because it appears like fixing. Now the Gemara says that really only applies to a kli because a kli has no other reason to go into a mikvah other than the fact that you want to take the tumah off, and therefore any time a kli is put in the mikvah it appears like it's being fixed. However, a person's allowed to go to the mikvah because a person could be just going for a swim. It could be that he's hot and is going to cool off. Therefore, it doesn't not necessarily appear like he is fixing himself, and therefore the Rabbanan didn't say that it's aser. The Gemara asks there, what about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, you cannot say that he's rinsing himself off. You're not allowed to wash yourself on Yom Kippur. Therefore, it would be forbidden Yom Kippur to have a person go to the mikveh to take his tumah off. Because again, it can't be that he's going in the mikveh to cool himself. Therefore, he must be going to take the tumah off, and therefore it appears as if he is fixing himself. Now, Rava disagrees. Rava says you can't have different halachos as far as Hilchos Shabbos for actual Shabbos and for the Yom Kippur Shabbai, for the Shabbos aspects of Yom Kippur. That can't be. It's got to be a uniform halacha, and therefore, since it's permitted on Shabbos, the Rabbanan didn't make exer because it could be that he's cooling off. It's also permitted on Yom Kippur, even though he can't be cooling off, but they made a uniform rule. So how could Rav over here say that whether you're allowed to drink vinegar depends on before your meal or after your meal? It's got to have a uniform halachic approach. So the Gemara says that Rava actually goes with this halacha, and Rava changed his mind about the Yom Kippur halacha. The Gemara says, how do you know? Maybe he changed his mind about this. Maybe this halacha came first, and then he changed his mind when he said that. So the Gemara says, no, because we have a brisa. We have a brisa that says you are allowed to go to the mikvah on Tisha B'Av, on Yom Kippur, whenever you want. Okay. Now the Gemara goes to the next discussion in the Mishnah, which was somebody who wants to rub oil on himself. And we had a machlokes about rose oil. We had the Tanna Kamma who said that rose oil is only for the rich, and therefore a regular person cannot use it for curative purposes because it's obviously not something he would do if he was healthy. And Rosh Shimon says, no, all Jews have the halachic status of the kings, and therefore they're allowed to. So the Gemara, first of all, says that Rav Bar Zavda says that Rav paskin like Reb Shimon. The Gemara says, Rav paskin like Reb Shimon. You mean to say that Rav always holds like Reb Shimon? It's not true, because in the famous machlokes about davar she'eino miskaven, doing a malacha which you did not intend to do, you were intending to do something else. So that's a machlokes Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted, and Rav there paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. Rav says it's forbidden. How do you know? So Gemara has two attempts to show this. Gemara first of all has a case. The situation is where you have a faucet, a spigot on the side of a barrel, and it's loose, and therefore the wine is dripping out around the sides of the spigot, between the spigot and the hole in the barrel. So you would stuff that up with cloth. So the Gemara says that Rav says you can't do that because you can end up squeezing the liquid out of the cloth, which is a malacha on Shabbos of Schita. The Gemara says, what do you mean? But that's a davar she'eino miskaven. You're not intending to squeeze, you're intending to do something else. And therefore, if Rav really held like Reb Shimon, you should say that that's permitted. The Gemara says that's not a source. Rav could really hold like Reb Shimon, and it's still that's forbidden, because even Reb Shimon would agree that that's forbidden, because it's a psik reisha. It's for sure going to happen. Any situation where what you're intending has unavoidable consequences, which are an Isser D'Oraisa, Reb Shimon says it's Asr, even Isser D'Rabbanan, according to some. Okay, so the Gemara says, fine, that's not a good source, but I still can prove to you that Rav does not hold like Reb Shimon. The machlokes Rav and Shmuel, who the halacha is like. There's two versions of this. Either it's Rav and Shmuel said it explicitly, or we have Rav Chia bar Ashi saying the name of Rav, and Yehuda bar Chanan, Barami saying the name of Shmuel. Either way, we know that the halacha is that Shmuel holds like Rav, Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon, and Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda. So again, how here could we say that Rav holds like Reb Shimon? So Gemara answers that Rav does not agree with Rabbi Shimon. This halacha, he ends up saying the same thing as Reb Shimon, that it's permitted. But not because he holds of Reb Shimon's reasoning. He does not hold that all Jews are kings and they're allowed to do anything that a king would do. So Gemara says, so then why does Rav say that it's permitted here? Maybe you want to tell me because rose oil doesn't help. It will not cure the ailment in the first place. So the Gemara says that can't be, because the Tanna Kamma said that kings are allowed to do it. If kings are allowed to do it, then why would kings be interested in it? Unless because of the fact that it does restore. It helps. So the Gemara says no. The reason is because in Rav's town, rose oil was common, it was cheap, and therefore everybody was allowed to use it. So Rav said, in our town, you're allowed to do it, and that's why he comes out with the same halacha as Rabbi Shimon, but there is a difference, though. Rabbi Shimon would say it even in a place where it's uncommon, because he says you're allowed to spend, you don't have to worry about the fact that it's not something a healthy person of your financial status would do, because you're a Jew. And Rav would disagree with that. Rav would say, no, only if it's cheap, and it's something that's accessible, are you allowed to do it. This takes us to the end of the chapter Shmona Shratzim, and now we start Eluk Sharm, which discusses the halacha of tying knots. We'll have two Mishnayos in this short piece of the daf we have left, one about the type of knots you are allowed to make, and one about the type of knots you are not allowed to make. So the first Mishnah defines the type of knots which it is forbidden to tie or untie. The Mishnah says two statements. First of all, any knot which is like the knot that sailors use or camel drivers use is forbidden to tie or untie. And Rameir says anything which you can tie or untie with one hand, anything which you can untie with one hand, you're allowed to tie or untie that knot. The Gemara will explain these two things. So first of all, the Gemara says, what is the significance of camel drivers and sailors? So what happened was as follows. The camels and the ships both had a ring. The camel's ring was a strap that was run through a hole made between the wall in his nose. Between the hole was made in the wall between the two nostrils, and a strap was run through there. And the ship had a ring that was also made from a strap that was in the front of the ship. Now, what they used to do was that when they wanted to tie down the ship or the camel, they would run a long strap through that ring, and they would tie it that way. The ship and the camel would not be able to escape. So the Gemara says, what are we referring to? Are we referring to the long strap that you tie, that you slip through the ring? That can't be, because that is not a knot meant to last. The only knot which is forbidden to tie on Shabbos or to untie is one which is meant to last. That one is meant to be tied and untied every time you tie the camel, and you untie the camel or tie the ship, and you untie the ship. So the Gemara says, no, it's referring to the ring itself. The ring itself was made out of leather straps, and that you tie once, it's meant to last forever. It's just meant to be there, and then you can slide the other strap through the ring. Okay, now as far as Meir, so he said if you could untie with one hand, then it's a permitted knot. The Gemara's question is, what is his standard? What does that mean? That means that it's loose, or that means just that you could, the knot is constructed in such a way that you could just pull it out with one hand. What would the case be where there's a difference? If you have a slip knot, a bow, it can be made very tightly and be pulled out with one hand. So the Gemara is not sure what Rameir would say about that, and the Gemara leaves it as a take. Okay, the next Mishnah begins by introducing Isuri D'Rabbanan, but then it jumps to things which are mutter. So it says there are some things which are not also D'Oraisa, as the sailor's knot and the camel driver's knot are, and the following things are actually mutter. And that is a woman who wants to tie certain straps that stretch from shoulder to shoulder on her clothing, the drawstrings of her hairnet, or of the belt that she wore, which had strings, was a wide belt, the shoelaces, shoe straps, closures for flasks of wine or oil, or a cloth pot cover with drawstrings. All these things you're allowed to tie the string, and the reason obviously is that it's meant to be tied and untied. It's not meant to stay tied. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov adds, you're also allowed to tie a rope in front of an animal to keep him in place in Shabbos. So the Gemara asks, I don't understand. First you tell me that there's some things which are only asur d'Rabbanan, and then you start listing things which are mutter altogether. What's going on? So the Gemara says, you have to insert a phrase. There's some things which are only asur d'Rabbanan. That's referring to the strap that you run through the ring in the nose of the camel or on the end of the ship. Because that's meant to be tied and untied, but it's also a permanent strong knot. We'll see why. And therefore it's an asur d'Rabbanan. However, the rest of this list are absolutely mutter and are not forbidden at all. That's the end of Daf Kuf Yud Aleph. I'll pick it up with that.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.